People think that it's crazy and that I'm lying when I tell them that I've partnered on over 1,000 units before turning 22 and closing my first apartment deal before turning 21. But my brothers and I, or my twin and I, have actually done that.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Invest Iowa. Today, I have Jeffrey with me that is going to talk about how to get into apartments property, like the real estate world. We're going to talk about his story and his brother story. How many brothers
Mhm.
do you do deals with?
Yeah, I have a twin and an older brother, so two total.
Two total. So it's a total
Yeah,
of three brothers, and I found them through Instagram, and their story is amazing. Stick around to find out how they're successful, what makes them unique, and why you should listen to what they have to say, and what can you learn from what they have to say. So thanks so much for coming, Jeffrey. I appreciate you being in the podcast.
yeah, no, appreciate you having me. Your name's Extra. Is that how you pronounce it?
Now, Sebastian.
Sebastian. Okay, your name
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
here as Extra.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's a cool name, man.
Yeah, that's the name of my company.
Okay, cool, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sebastian. Awesome.
But yeah, man, walk me through the process. So you're heavily into real estate now. What's your story? What's your background? Where do you come from?
Yeah, man. So I got into real estate about 3 years ago. Similar to you, I grew up playing soccer. I was very competitive as a kid, played at a high level, and I've always had that just hunger to do things and be good at it. And it was definitely more so in an arrogant way growing up. And as I've come into my faith, I think I've tried to make that change. But that was like my upbringing, come from a low income household. My mom was a single mother, so she came from Guatemala when she was very young, 19. Had my four siblings, or sorry, three siblings and myself in New York. And then I moved here to Durham, North Carolina when I was about 2 years old. So we've been here pretty much my whole life. I'm still in Durham. And now I'm 21 years old. As I mentioned, got into real estate 3 years ago alongside my two brothers who are now my partners. One of them is 24, who's my older brother, and the other one's the same age as me. We're twins. So let me know if I'm going into too much, but
No,
we
that's
got into
insane.
this
That's insane, dude. Like you guys are 20, like less than 24 and already getting into so many deals, right? Like you guys are outliers to anybody out there. You guys are outliers. Like I feel like it's super interesting. I want to know more.
for sure, man, for sure. So we were college freshmen 3 years ago. I was a college freshman. My older brother was an upperclassman, and I went to school without really there's a book called Napoleon by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil, and in it he talks about drifting, and a lot of young people, specifically young men, I think right now are drifters, where we don't necessarily know what we want to do, we don't necessarily know what our quote unquote purpose is, and it's easy to gravitate towards negative things when you're drifting. So when I was going into college, I knew I wanted to be a good student, and I knew I wanted to make money. I just didn't know what that looked like, so I was just doing what all college kids were doing. On top of it, I was getting good grades, and I was doing extracurriculars, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do after until 6 months into my freshman year. I went to a trip to Guatemala with my mom for the first time, my two brothers and I, my sister, and obviously, you coming from Colombia, I know there's certain pockets of Colombia, just like Guatemala, that are very, very impoverished, and that's where my mom comes from. Very, very humble beginnings. So when I was there, I spent 3 weeks, and I was reading a lot of books. My older brother had already learned about wholesaling real estate before going on the trip. So on the trip, he was listening to podcasts and telling me all about it. So by the time that we came back, we realized that we had an opportunity here in America that no one over there has. And it's easy to say that people that are in poverty are there because of their own reasons or it's their fault. But I was listening to a book a few weeks ago and it mentioned people in poverty. It's easy for us as people that perhaps aren't in poverty or aren't as impoverished to say that it's their fault, but people can only dream as big as they can see. So if no one around them is doing things or successful in certain ways, then it's not really their fault. And here in America, I see all these entrepreneurs killing it, whether that's on social media or in person or at meetups, things like that. So when I got back, started taking action. And I'll fast forward. So from that point on, when we hit we touched down back in America, I went back to school. I started my wholesaling journey by cold calling. Similar to you as an agent, we were reaching out to homeowners, starting generating leads. We were calling for about 2 hours a day while we were each at our own respective universities. Since we didn't go to the same school, we would just FaceTime towards the end of the school day and kind of regroup and let us, give each other an update on how our day was. So eventually we got sent home because of COVID. So now we were all back at home. Instead of only putting 2 hours a day towards the business, it went from 2 hours to slowly all day, 9 to 8 cold calling. And after the first 6 months, it took us a while, but eventually we closed on our first deal. That was the biggest deal in the single family space that we made. And I'll stop there, but it took us a first year of doing about 15 deals in the single family space where we were doing wholesaling and creative financing, and then one fix and flip, and then we transitioned into apartments.
Wow, 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 wow. Wait, tell me more. Tell me more. So on that transition, so COVID hit, and then that's where you started to pretty much stick on your business full time.
Exactly. So the way that that looked was cold calling, and we learned how to do all that, how to pull a list of data, how to skip trace, how to upload the data into a dialer, and then cold callings, using a script. Eventually, after the first week, you don't need a script. It's pretty much the same thing you're saying every single time. So I was making thousands of calls a week, eventually calling 9 to 8 p.m. every day on Sundays, pretty much 10 to 6, Saturdays, 9 to 7. So we were pretty much generating dozens of leads a week and using a CRM that was free called Podio to organize it. And eventually you learn how to talk to an attorney, you learn how to pull or create a contract that you found online, and slowly you start making, failing forward is what we like to call it. So eventually
Failing
we closed on
forward.
our first deal.
I love that. Failing forward.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, love that. Never heard that before. So you guys wholesaling, and then how do you get the ball rolling? What's
Yeah.
next?
Yeah. So once we closed on our first deal, it was, like I mentioned, the biggest deal that we did. And so we didn't have any money. We obviously are I was 18, my brother was 21, my twin was 18, and we had zero money. But my older brother could qualify for a credit card, and he had like a grand in savings. So that's what we used to buy lists of data because it's not free. And the dialer, it's a subscription, so you have to pay money monthly. So we were in debt after credit card debt. It was about $7,000, which is a lot for us at the time. It was like, man, that's crazy. We
Yeah.
can't go back now.
Yeah.
There's no turning back. So we had to find the first deal, and eventually we did. After cold calling for months and talking to sellers, doing follow up, we ended up closing with that money. We then took it, reinvested almost all of it into the business, pretty much all of it into the business, and that really came from pulling more list of data, getting another dialer so we can call more, and hiring some VAs. And eventually, we also joined a mastermind group that taught us how to do creative financing, and that was owner financing and subject to. So we learned how to do that through the mastermind, and we were able to use those strategies that we learned to go and pretty much get 2 rental properties for little to no money.
Okay, tell me about that mastermind. So, how does it come across your how does it come across the table? What were the conversations?
Yeah, so we'd already we're big on being lifelong learners. So after COVID hit and I came home, I never went back to school. I just finished school that year, and I told myself and my brothers, if we close on our first deal, we start making good money, I'm not going back because I'm going to school to get a job, and I don't want to get a job. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it taught me about being an entrepreneur and uh, financial freedom, things like that. So I didn't want to go back to school. So instead of paying money for traditional education, instead, once we made money, we learned about getting a mentorship. And through YouTube, that was all free content and free education. We heard about a guy named Pace Morby and
Pace
Sub 2.
Morby. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this was like 3 years ago. It was pretty like small. It was like 100 people, 200 people in the group at the time. And it was he was already giving so much game and free content that was really good on YouTube for free. And my brothers and I were like, if this guy's giving all this for free, imagine what his mentorship would look like if he paid for it. So we did it, and we were able to join. The content itself was very valuable. You were able to get access to calls. So what I do is watch the content while I was cold calling and just implement what I was learning in real time. And over
Replicated.
time, exactly. And I got pretty good at pitching the strategies.
Gotcha. So like what strategies did you learn? So like sub two and seller finance, what else did you learn? And explain those two to me.
Yeah, so owner financing, those are the main two we learned, owner financing and sub two. Mainly how to overcome the objections, which I'm not as polished as I used to be because I don't actually pitch those as often as I do now. Now I'm mainly in multifamily, so that was for more single family deals. But owner financing is when you're pretty much having the seller hold the note or be the bank on a deal where you're going to be making payments to the seller. as if they're a bank, and you'll pay it off over a certain amount of time. My goal was always to make it as long as possible, and we call that amortization, pretty much what the payment schedule looks like. So if I could do $400 a month, for example, and I can rent the property out for $1,000, then I can cash flow 600. That's a good deal to me. And we try to do 0% interest, 0% down. That was the mindset. It was a hustle, obviously, because there's not a lot of these people that are willing to sell it at those terms, but that's what we were looking for. And then on the subject to aspect, that's when you keep the mortgage in place, meaning it's not, the owner doesn't own it free and clear. When a seller finance, when there's a seller finance deal, a lot of times they own it free and clear, meaning they don't have any debt or mortgage on the property. But if it's a sub two, meaning subject to the existing mortgage, there typically is a mortgage or debt on the property, so they don't own it free and clear. So
Yeah.
instead of calling it,
What are your, sorry to interrupt your thought.
you're good.
What are the biggest takeaways from that? Because like landlords are landlords and not necessarily investors in most cases. Of course, that varies from time to time, situation to situation. But how do you overcome the what guarantees me that you're just not gonna walk away, ruin the property in 2 years and give it back to me?
Yeah. So initially, what I'd say is we're going to give you a down payment, right? And if I do walk away, I lose that, and you get to keep the house. So I mean, that'd be a pretty good situation to be in. Let's say we give you 10, 20 grand for however long we're in the deal. You're still receiving all those payments that I'm giving you, and you get to keep the house, and you get to keep the down payment. That in that case, that's for me, that's a win-win on your end because then you could just go around and do the same thing again or sell it, and you're making a profit based on what, or you're making more than you would have made it if you just sold it that day. On top of it, typically for us, when it comes to a subject to, there are certain clauses that we'll include in our agreements, something called a performance deed or a deed in lieu of foreclosure. Now, what that pretty much is, instead of you having to take the property back or go through the foreclosure process, if I miss a payment, you'll then just immediately get the property back because I'm out of contract.
You
So
you
that's
waive
typically
you waive those rights.
exactly. So we'll have the attorney draw that up, but there's certain things, and as I mentioned, I don't do this as often as I used to. So that's what we used to do. It could be different now, but there's a lot of different reasons why a seller would choose to go that route. Typically, because you're able to offer more than if you were to do a cash offer.
Right, right. Because at a cash offer, you need to offer this. You need the discount in order to find value in the property, right? Whereas self
Exactly.
finance, you can go a lot higher because those payments are in the future. They're not in the present, and money in the future is less than right now. So,
Exactly.
and I feel
100%.
like yeah, if people like that, that's a hard concept to understand. Like I had to watch dozens of videos to finally realize that's
Yeah.
a thing. Like that's a thing. Um, for so now that we're almost at the end of like the history of what you guys are working on. So like you joined Pace Morby's mastermind, right? Learn tons from it, right? What are the main takeaways from that? What are the big things that you learned from it?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, it was the owner financing and the sub two. And the thing I learned about like all mastermind groups is it's really about the network. And I think as soon as your goals start to change, which mine's changed a little bit, which I can get into in regards to why we ended up transitioning into multifamily. And we joined a similar mastermind group in regards to it being a place where like-minded individuals with similar interests and goals are all in one area or congregate in one location, virtually or literally at events. There's different reasons to join different groups, but I think joining groups is really important. And the benefits and takeaways from Paces was one, the network that I made lifelong friends from it. Two, how to structure an owner finance deal and how to structure a subject to deal. A lot of sales skills come into that as well that I took away from it. Obviously, there's a lot of objections when it comes to pitching those types of offerings and terms. So I learned kind of how to deal with that.
Wow, wow, that's pretty cool. How long has it been since you? Are you still in that mastermind?
Yeah, it's lifelong.
Oh, gotcha. See what you're saying. Did you join another mastermind after that? You mentioned.
Yeah, so we got into multifamily a year after getting into real estate, and sub two is it does multifamily now, but when I was in it, it was all pretty much single family. So instead, I'm still in it, but I then found another group that was tailored more towards multifamily, and that was the group called Think Multifamily. Pretty much teaches you how to find apartments, and they do 100 plus units. So that's what we focus on now. What we do is called apartment syndication, where we'll pull together a group of investors' money. It can be pretty much doctors, physicians, lawyers, typically high net worth individuals who will invest with us passively. Excuse me, and then we'll go and take down a large apartment complex and execute a business plan with the intention of giving them a good return on their investment. And that's typically what we attempt to do.
Okay, it's interesting that you were mentioning that because I just had another guess that like it was pretty similar to your transition, right? Like syndication seems to be the best route. So for the amount of effort that you put into it and the amount of returns seems to be like the goal, the big picture. Why did you why did you run away from single family? Why is no longer single family, although it was a good opportunity and it taught you the right things to learn before making that jump? Why is
Yeah.
no longer single family as valuable in your business?
Yeah. So I would say there's various different reasons, mainly because of the scalability of multifamily. So initially going into single family, obviously, that's what everyone typically starts with. If you're brand new, and I was brand new, and coming from, being 18, not having a lot of money, not knowing anything about real estate, not knowing anyone in real estate, you jump into what you think is the only thing. I didn't even know you could buy an apartment at first, to be honest. So that's why I went into single family. Then when you start to learn more, I started to realize that it's going to take forever for me to reach my financial goals doing single family investing because one, buying one house it's a process, and if you have to buy 100 houses, that takes 100 different closings typically, and it's a lot of work to find 100 different properties that work and are good deals. That was just not something I really wanted to do, and I started looking at different people and thought leaders in the real estate space, and a lot of them that I looked up to were in commercial real estate, primarily multifamily, for various reasons, whether that was scalability. You can, buy one deal that's 100 units and you're already at 100. You can also hire a third party property manager with a larger deal, and it just the income that the property produces will pay for it versus a single family house. You typically aren't justified with the amount of income that it produces because it doesn't produce as much, right? So those are some reasons why we chose to go into multifamily. And then I also wanted to eventually do multifamily investing. And I thought, why not start now? I couldn't think of a good reason other than some of the limiting beliefs I was telling you about earlier, being too young, not having enough money, not being smart enough, quote unquote, or not knowing enough people, things like that. But those are all literally limiting beliefs because eventually I was able to do it. And a lot of that has changed, but you kind of do that after you overcome those limiting beliefs.
Interesting. Jeffrey, how do you manage the barrier of have you ever come across people not wanting to do business with you because of your age?
For sure. I think at the beginning, anyone, regardless of how old you are, is going to, if you're brand new, regardless, you can be old and brand new, young and brand new, or both, but they'll give you that vibe in person sometimes. And I think it doesn't necessarily come because you look young, but typically it's because maybe you are not speaking the lingo or you haven't done a deal and therefore you don't really know a lot about the business. But some people will look at me and I can't help but look young because I am young and I
Yeah.
don't have facial hair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my voice might be a little light. So they'll look at me and be like, who's this kid? They don't want to give me their time sometimes, but that doesn't really happen as much as you think. But if it does happen, one, I think you just have to be humble yourself and understand that that's just going to happen. Like, I think ego would get in the way of me. If I was to be offended by that, it'd be my ego. So really don't necessarily let it get to me. And I just have a conversation with that person. And pretty quickly, they'll realize that there's no point in, I have some type of background in the space after doing a few deals. So a lot of that comes from actually putting in the work to learn what I'm talking about, at least trying to listen to podcasts, trying to go to different mastermind groups and go to different conferences, uh, look up articles, be a player in the game that's consistently learning so that when you have conversations with people, you can answer their questions and you can talk about it at a high level. And that way you walk in with more confidence and people can pick up on that, especially if you can carry a conversation and ask good questions and also input, have some type of feedback. But the main thing is actually doing deals, which takes time. And in the beginning, you won't have any deals, right? But over time, if you just stay consistent and you get deals done, it's easier said than done, obviously. But once I started doing deals, I still like look pretty much the same. Maybe I've gotten a little bigger. I'm trying to, but but like now I can say I'm a partner on over 1,000 units, and you'll see their physical appearance and their physical, I guess, presentation change in demeanor when I say that. And now they take me more seriously. And I don't say it to be egotistical, but sometimes that's what it takes for them
Of
to
course,
just give you the
of
time of
course.
day.
Yeah, numbers don't lie, right?
Yeah,
Like people automatically take you at a different level. They're not messing around with you. How do
exactly.
you so now we haven't talked about your team. What does that look like as a brothers, as partners? Like how do you administrate the company?
For sure. And to touch on one more thing, another way we've established credibility, because at the end of the day, I think that's what it comes down to,
Mm-hmm.
is are you a credible person? Online, if you look us up, and a lot of people that are at these conferences, they've already heard about my brothers and I before I meet them in person because I'm on podcasts. I've tried to get on big podcasts, and I've also put a lot of content out there. My brother does. So they hear about us, and it's social proof, is what it's referred to in regards to who you are before you walk into a room. And if people have heard of you and they already see you as these people that are social leaders and thought leaders, regardless of whether or not you are, I think it kind of is just trying your best to be consistent with something and there's something that you can provide in value and content. So you don't even have to have done deals. It can just be about mindset or something, but you can always put something out there. So that helps a lot. In regards to our team, I do the investor relations and capital raising. My older brother, does our acquisitions. So he'll go and find deals, talk to brokers, walk properties, underwrite deals. And he also does our asset management. And then my twin brother does our podcast. He does our newsletters, social media content, website, all of that. And then in regards to our other partner, his name is Mark Kenny. Now, this is where the experience comes in. And the most important piece, I think, especially when you're getting started. He's a mentor, he's a partner, and he brings in a lot of his own relationships. So that's how we were able to do all these deals because of him. So through him, we have our attorney, our insurance broker, which is the person that helps us get the quotes for our properties when it comes to insurance. He also brings in a debt broker, which is someone that helps find lenders to loan on our deals. And then through him, I'm able to attract other partners to come work with us, like whether that's a co-GP, a co-general partner that it helps with various different things on the capital side, asset management, etc. I'm able to attract them because my mentor, Mark Kenny, he has over 1 billion assets under management, over 30 years of experience. He's obviously a lot older than I am or experienced. So when people see a team like us who are young, they'll look at him and say, okay, it makes sense. They're partners with a guy who has been in the industry for a long time and has a great reputation.
Okay, so not only that masterminds, but also finding those right partnerships that are mentors as well.
100%. I think that's the main piece.
Mm, connect and grow. Gotcha. What's the future for you guys? What is it like? What's the next 5 years look like for you guys?
Yeah, so our goal is to do 1 to 2 deals a quarter. And when I say a deal, it is 100 to 200 units, B class, 1980s vintage or newer in North Carolina, South Carolina, or Atlanta. So with 1 to 2 deals every single quarter from this point on, that's about 100 million assets under management every single year on top of what we already have, which would it's an audacious goal. It's pretty lofty, I would say, but I think you go big and see where you land, and through God willing, would be able to make it. And I think it's fun to have things that are kind of scary,
Yeah, yeah, new challenges. What are
100%.
what are your challenges? You specifically in the future?
Yeah, for me, it's I'm new to my faith in God, so I'm learning a lot about it, and that's a challenge in myself. Is there's so much to learn from it, and I think it's helped me change in a lot of positive ways. So that's one challenge I'm going through. Also, trying to understand, like as a young entrepreneur, a new, I'm obviously younger than a lot of people in this space, which is a good thing. And I also think it comes with its own challenges, like trying to stay humble. I'm not saying that I have struggled with that in the past, to be honest, in various different ways. And whether it's me lacking confidence versus being overconfident, trying to just be humble in all aspects of my life, not even business, honestly. That's pretty easy for me. Again, I could be egotistical even saying that, but like just that's one struggle as well. And another thing that's weird is trying to find a way to really appreciate and to enjoy my life in regards to doing things that I do that I find happiness in because I can work all day and look back and be like, man, those last few months were not that fun and I didn't really enjoy it. Or then I'm like, okay, what else should I be doing that is actually fun? And then I'll do it. You can look at what other people our age are doing, which is like drinking and doing dumb things. Not dumb things, sorry. Things that you probably like wouldn't find as productive.
Yeah.
Whatever we can describe it as. And then I'll think, well, that's not that fun for me either. So sometimes I look for good, positive habits to have that I can do on a long-term basis. And lately it's been church things and sports. I love soccer. I love playing basketball, things like that. But that's a struggle of finding something that I'm fulfilled in, that I enjoy, and that can have a positive impact on a long lasting, I guess, in a long lasting way.
Right. Because most people that are your level, you guys' levels, we're talking about 30 years old or above, right? Like on average, right? This is not something that usually it's acquired when you are 18, 20, 21. What does that feel like? Is it different? Does it change your perspective at such a young age?
Um, I would say my perspective has altered for sure in certain ways, but I don't think it's ways that I would have expected. If anything, I'm just there's so much else you have to learn. So for me, as I've been new in my faith, that's really been the foundation of how I perceive the world lately, and hopefully that's my goal is for it to be long term. So when you look at it through the lens of that and my faith and your faith, and whatever your faith is in the audience, it doesn't really. You just put it in your perspective. I think you'll come to realize that there's almost too much for you to have to improve, quote unquote, improve in, and so much that we have to work on ourselves. So I wouldn't say trying to stay humble. That's the first thing thought that came to mind. Is you can easily become a egotistical person
Yeah.
and think you're all that. But one that you, one thing I also notice is you start to surround yourself with people that are awesome in so many ways. I'm like, I have so much to learn, whether that's through business, spirituality, just being a good person, whatever it is. I surround myself with, I try to at least, with those kinds of people that I always feel like I have so much to learn. So that never really becomes a problem or too big of an issue. But it does feel really good because it's kind of cool. I talked to my brothers about it. Like, what 3 years ago, this was a complete dream. Behind me, it says I have a painting that I won at one of my events that I went to.
Yeah.
And it says it all starts with a dream with a kid staring at a Porsche.
Yep.
Literally, that's what it started with a few years ago. My brothers and I were like, how cool would it be to be real estate entrepreneurs? And you can see it. Like, I can see what it would look like. And it doesn't look like, didn't think it looked like this because it's not, I thought I would be farther along. I think we all do. But you start to realize that it's pretty cool because I'm building something with my brothers. I get to work with the people I love, I have fun with. We get to laugh all day and truly build something from the ground up. And I can work for myself. And it's very fulfilling and it is truly a blessing for me and my brothers. I'm very grateful. Don't want to take it for granted because we're just getting started. Obviously, we're very young, so we have a lot
Yep.
of time left. But I just get so excited about what we can build in the future. I look at books like the founder of Blackstone. He has an awesome book that he wrote. It's an autobiography of him, Stephen Schwarzman, and the way he built his company is very inspiring. So things like that really excite me for the future, and it's cool to see how our company, that's very young, is in the early stages of what we want it to look like. And that's like a project and it's like a sport, kind of like playing soccer. You get to build on it, work on it every day. So yeah, that's a
What
long-winded answer, but
what made you like what's the secret sauce? What's the reason why you guys are successful in your opinion? What makes you stand out?
yeah, I would say two things. One, maybe we didn't think at first that we were being authentic in regards to who we are, but we've never been afraid to tell people kind of where we come from. Sorry for the siren in the background also, but I always just lead with like I do come from a low income background. I'm 21. I didn't come from money. I didn't come from having a big family, single mom. So people are attracted to that for some reason. It's weird how they just want to help us being young and knowing that. And it's cool. It's interesting. Like I'll say that and they'll just meet us. And one thing is also I try to be the kind of person that always wants to learn from the other person. So if you can approach that mindset with that mindset to people, they tend to pick up on it and want to help you. And I really think that has become a long way. I like to think I can connect with people in a really good way. That's one of my best skills. I'm not very good at like a lot of things, but one thing I think I'm good at is connecting with others. So that has really helped. And by being authentic with others, they're just attracted to help you for some reasons is what really has helped us. And there's a book behind me called Who Not How. It just talks about how you don't have to know everything. It's all about who you know. And we've done a really good job at networking, building our relationships so that if I have some problem or need an answer to a question, I can make a phone call or shoot a text and I can get the answer.
That's yeah, that's networking is it's about who you know, it's not about what you know. Yeah. You get
100%.
your friends are the ones that give you money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not my friends.
But your friends are the connections that allow you to
Yeah,
like raise
yeah,
that capital. What
100%.
what what are your goals here in the United States? Like what's the plan? Wait, where do you see um brothers going in the future with regards to social media? What do you see in the future? What do you got going
Yeah,
on?
yeah, for social media, well, we're going to launch our YouTube channel next Friday, a week from today. And we have high hopes for that. My brother's put a lot of work into the videos, into the editing. We think YouTube's right now is one of the best platforms to be on for various reasons. We haven't really tapped into it as heavily as we could have and should have over the past few years. So once we launch that, he plans on being consistent and the kind of content that he'll be releasing, I think it's very non-traditional in a good way when you compare it to other influencers in our niche when it
Yeah.
comes to apartment syndication. So we want to take a different approach. Being very young in the space, most people are older, so their content looks very different. And if anything, it starts to look very similar to everyone else. So not in a bad or good way. I think ours will be different, and I think it'll have a unique and competitive advantage in the
A
market.
unique approach.
Exactly.
Because you guys' perspective is not the same as the 40-year-old, as the 50-year-old that just got plenty of capital and just know so much of so many other things.
Exactly. And I think you can also bring a younger vibe to it, you know?
Oh, I see. I see. I see how you guys could stand out.
Yeah.
What's the future of real estate in your opinion?
I think in general, real estate will always be a good place to be. There's so many different things going on in the economy, and I won't go into like interest rates and things like that. But I think it's always a good place for investors who want to have a diversified portfolio to place a certain portion of their portfolio into. So for me, it's my predominant diverse or I guess allocation of my portfolio because I believe in it so much. I think a large percentage of everyone's portfolio should be in cash flow producing assets, and real estate is a hard asset that produces cash flow. So I think that's a great place to be long term. I know you've heard this, it's very cliche. There's not a lot of land in the world, period. And I don't think we'll get any more of it unless we go to Mars, which won't take a long time. I mean, it might take a long time, we don't know. But right now there's a limited supply. So it's just if you buy a piece of property and a piece of land, there's only a limited amount of it. So over time, real estate is known to go up in price, regardless of where it is. I think over time, every specifically in the locations that we invest in, I think that's where you buy it. It'll go up in value or produce cash flow. Either way, if you buy for cash flow, you'll be fine.
Are you looking at properties and locations that you know, especially your brother that is the one from the acquisitions? Are you guys looking at properties that you guys are familiar with the area, or you just analyze the deal and if it's a good deal, you'll go for
Yeah, so we look in certain areas for sure, mainly the Carolinas in Atlanta
it?
for
Okay.
various reasons. Excuse me. One, it's a great place to be when it comes to job diversification and where jobs are going into. So if you just look at you can look it up where data and where jobs are moving into. Atlanta is one of the hottest places for tech companies to move into. North Carolina, South Carolina, where I live in Raleigh here in North Carolina, there's a lot of different jobs moving in. Where jobs go, people go, and where people go, demand for rental units goes up. which is good for investors. So that's why we pick certain locations. I think it's really important. Obviously, location is a cliche saying in our space, and I think there's a good reason for it.
What's the most important thing in syndication for you?
I think it's relationships. That's the first word that comes to mind. Whether you're talking to investors, your lenders, your debt broker, insurance broker, your partners, whoever it is, even your property manager, right? The better your relationship with everyone, the better your deals will go. So that's what the most important thing is for me.
Man, how can we reach out to you if we have any questions? We want to know more about what you guys are up to.
Yeah,
What are
for
you
sure.
guys' platforms?
Yeah, so we do have a free checklist that we like to allow people to use. It's pretty much any person that's interested in passive investing. You can use it to vet a passive investment opportunity, and you can get it at www.donisinvestmentgroup.com/checklist. And then you can visit that same website minus the dash checklist to see our website and visit our podcast at The Real Estate Monopoly on all podcast aggregators. And then for social media, feel free to reach out to us and me at Donis Brothers and then at Jeffrey Donis on every platform.
That's pretty well organized, man. I appreciate your time so much. This was a lot of information. I think
Yeah,
a lot of people will find it valuable. I think your story moves masses. And yeah, no, I just hope the best for you and hope to see you every time growing every day more.
likewise, man. I appreciate your time. This is awesome.
Yeah. I if you made it this far to the video, you find it valuable, hit the like, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys on the next one.